Hello, and welcome back to our series where we are building a people and culture management system. This series is brought to you by Prairie HR Solutions. My name is Jake Finger, Principal Consultant and Founder here at Prairie HR Solutions. And in this video, we're going to continue on with our compensation. And I know we're taking the long way around. You're like, my gosh, this is taking forever. And the reason why we're taking the long way is we want to keep it as basic as possible. So if you're building this on your own to tailor it to what it is that you need and your organization needs, we want you to understand at the very elementary level of what is occurring. So we're not trying to use fancy terms initially or these more, I guess, advanced things like objects and object constructors until we get to cleaning it up. We want to take the longer route. And if we have to build out an if statement, we build out that if statement. If we have to nest a bunch of them together, we'll nest a bunch of them together just so you can see what is occurring. So when you go to replace that long convoluted code with something more, as it's called, elegant, then you'll know that what that end result does, as opposed to me just giving you a code and saying, here you go, just change something here and run with it. Because if you just do it that way, you're going to be kind of stuck with having to Google and use other people's codes, as opposed to saying, okay, this is operationally what I need. This is what I can build it out at the very basic level. And then once I get done with that, then I can make it a little bit more elegant. And the more you do that, the more and more you'll jump ahead from the basic to the elegant, and it'll just make a lot more sense. At least that's the approach that we're taking. So this piece right here, this is where we left off. If you have no idea what I'm talking about here or where we got this, please go back and watch the previous videos so you'll get caught up and kind of understand what we have going on here. So where we left off was we created this little box here, and then we connected that to our code to fire off some alerts saying, hey, I got pushed. I am now this box. I am now this box. And then we simply just reset everything. Now we need to go back and change that a little bit because that was just a placeholder. The reason is we're not going to take this filtered all the way down. I mean, we could, but really we just want to take it down to this job title. And the reason for that is the more and more you filter down and you cascade drop down boxes and filters, the more complex it becomes. Because essentially what you're doing is you're creating a set of scenarios here, then you're creating a set of scenarios here, and yet another set of scenarios here. And then the farther down you go, you're exponentially increasing your scenarios that you have to address. So it gets very, very complex the farther down you drill. And I mean, there's different ways to handle that. And you'll see a way we can handle that once we get done with our job title. But for now, we're just going to take it down to the job title. And then if you do need it further, you'll have an example code of how it is that you can do that. It'll just be a little bit more complex, but at least you'll understand what needs to change in order to make that happen. So where we are is we have this initial division, and of course we can keep it company-wide here, or we can lock that division. And if let's not do the facilities, let's do something different. Let's do the executive division because there's only 5 here. Yep, 5. And what this allows us to do now is once this is locked, all these drop-down boxes update with the information that's only available within the executive division. So these drop-down titles here, and I know you can't see them because it's just the way I'm sharing my screen, and these drop-down boxes, when it comes up, is actually off this page. It's set it to Z index 1, I believe, or 100 or something like that. But anyway, if you're following along, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. And then the same thing exactly for this functional family. The functional families, these are only available underneath this executive. If there's an executive employee that doesn't have, this is just not included. And the same with the job levels, the locations the same way. And of course, our employee numbers. You should only have 5 employee numbers. Now, we can jump in here and pick, like, say, financial specialist, and it'll filter it. And then we can do the same thing with, like, web developer, and that'll do the same exact thing, and on and on and on. But what's not happening is when we click this box, because what ends up happening is this box resets the other 4 boxes or other 5 boxes and clears that data. So we don't want that. What we just want to do is set the value, not necessarily clear, but just set the value. So how we can do that is, let's go back over here to our code. And instead of, say, when it does this comp drop down box, it's running this piece right here. And if we click our comp functional family, currently we just have it to reset everything. And we don't want it to reset, but we do want to set the value of these boxes. So instead of clearing this, I say we'll just pick the comp functional family for now. So instead of clearing this, what we want to do is we want to take, and we're going to need to do a lot of consolidating with our variables and putting them into global variables. So now instead of this, let's put them up here. What we need to do is we need to take our comp jobs, and instead of clearing them, we need to set the value to all jobs. And then we need to do the same thing with comp functional family dot value is going to equal all families, and so on. So let me pause this so you don't have to watch me rewrite this. Okay, so now I built out the rest of these. You'll see that instead of the reset, I have this piece broken down. Now, I have all of these here, and I'm just going to comment out the one that we don't want to fix. So we don't want that one closed out if we're clicking on comp family function, or the functional family. We want that to stay put. Now what we can do is we can grab this, and instead of resetting everything here and then repopulating it, because that's not what we're going to do, we can just replace this, and you'll see why I have this lock comp division thing filled out, because there's really no reason why we need to run that again. Once this division, well, at least not right now, once this division or this comp jobs drop down is clicked. So now what we can do is come down here, we have we have this job function, or this job level. So we'll get rid of that, and we don't need to comment out that. We need to keep this, and I hope you're seeing what I'm doing here. We can go to the comp state, and instead of resetting everything, we just want to set the values because we want to keep it. We don't want to overwrite it, because if we overwrite it, then all it's going to have in that drop-down box is that. So this is the comp state. So we want to close out that. And then this, instead, we want to close out this and then keep that. So now let's kind of walk through what's happening here. So if something triggered, a drop-down box was selected, and if that drop-down event came from the comp jobs and equal the comp jobs ID, then we want to run this. And we're declaring this variable, we're declaring that variable, we're getting the value of the comp jobs, what's in there. And then we are setting the values of the other drop downs to default. And then what we're wanting to do is to grab this value and grab the comp division value, which is up here, and send it over to our get filter data and then process it. If it wasn't that, right, if it wasn't this comp job, say we did the functional family, then all we're wanting to do is set everything to default. And the same here, set everything to default, set everything to default. Now, this lock comp division, what this lock comp division did was it grabbed our division value and it disabled it true, went to gray, and then ran our div filter DD data, which we don't need to do that because it should already be locked. So we're going to leave that commented out, and let's refresh this, and then we'll go back to our code or our sheet here and see what we got. Now this should take care of that. We may have to do a little bit of cleanup on situations that we haven't thought of yet. Let's make sure that everything is fine. Okay, that's good. It resets everything, and that's because that's not checked. So now let's do all jobs. It should reset it. Voila. Okay, so now I guess we can't lock in all divisions because we haven't built in a situation for that yet. Now let's lock in the executive again. Lock it in. Now we have our 5 pieces. We have 4 different functional families, 3 job levels, 4 states, and 5 employees. So now if we were to select build-in technology, it should filter, which it does. All these are set to, nothing. And if we select something in our functional family, should reset everything here. Now it's not running anything yet. We're just trying to see if it's not necessarily clearing anything, and it's not. All our options are still here, and then the same thing with our state. Everything's still here, and our employee ID number, everything's still here. Good. So now we have that. So now what we can do is work on creating the functionality or adding the functionality to where if we do select, say, management, then it's going to filter that, grab it, and then populate it. So let's come back here to our code and see exactly how we did that for our job value, which is this right here. So what we did was we essentially took a Google script, run, success handler, all this, fired off that function in our Google Apps script side and passed the value of the division and the value of the job field. So there's a different way that we can do this, and this is what we're going to have to end up doing. So let's empty this down. Yep, this is a mess, but we'll clean it up here in a second. So let's create ourselves an empty array. Let's just call this filter criteria. And let's just set that to an empty array here. Okay. Now, what we can do is we can, before we send this, we can set this filter array, this filter criteria array. Let's try this. Equal to, and then let's pass our comp division value and our comp jobs value. So now what I would like to do is do a console log. I want to see how this looks. And then we'll do a console log up here. Because where my mind is going is if we are going to have to essentially include, say, the comp functional family, we're going to need to pass even more information through this. And now theoretically, you can pass as many arguments as your bandwidth and memory will handle, but it gets very cluttered. So let's save this and then run it again, and then we'll come back over here and pull up our F12. So let me pull up our F12 here real quick, just so I can watch the console. And I know you're not able to see this for the same exact reason. It's kind of sitting above. It's not sharing it. So let's do our executive, empty array. And it's not filling that array yet because we haven't selected anything. So now we're selected. So now let's select a job. Let's say finance specialist. So empty array, empty array. It's populating. So let's do website developer. Okay. It's pulling that up. It's fixed. So where my mind is going is to, instead of passing all those arguments, I want to see if we can pass an array. So let's actually go back here and see why we were getting an empty array, because something's not making sense here. So let's come back over here, criteria, let's highlight that and see where it's popping up. Okay, there, it's not, oh, that's the reason why it's not popping up, okay. Criteria, okay, so there it goes. But this is the idea that instead of this comp division value and this comp jobs value, we can now simply pass our filter criteria to our get div filter data. So now if we come over here to our Google Apps Script side, we now need to dip into that array. So get comp filter, here we go. No, that's DD. Here we go, filter data. So you'll see we're taking this comp division and the comp value. So what we are actually going to do instead of having those two arguments is we are simply going to grab our filter criteria, which is now this array, and pass it here. Now we need to access that array. So our div filter, this comp division piece, existed in that 0 index. So we can put this here and do 0. And then our job was in the 1 index. So now let's save this and go back and see if that made any bit of difference, which it really shouldn't have, because all we did was make it a little bit more scalable. Okay, so let's come up here. Let's do executive since I only have 5. Empty array, locked it. Executive, there's our 5. Now let's do our jobs, website developer, empty array, 2. and executive and website developer. Okay, now it looks like we're getting a script error, reference error, comp jobs is not defined. So let's figure out where that is. Comp jobs. So let's come back over here. And yes, of course it's not defined. So it's not comp jobs value. It is filter criteria 1. So that's what we need to change. If filter criteria 1 is all jobs, then that, else return this. Okay, so that should take care of that. Okay, so now let's refresh it. Go back over here and load executive. It's locked. Let's do building technology. Building technology is an empty array first, and then it comes down to 2, and it's executive and building technology, and it should populate. Okay, good. So then we should do finance specialist, then it should do the same thing, change it, and then let's say we just want to do Florida, and it should reset everything except it's not taking it back, which is an easy fix. We just got to send it back. Okay, good. So now what we can do is, now that we have this, we can come back over here to our code, and if it is comp jobs, this is what we do. Now, if it is, say, our comp functional family, what we want to do is similar to the thing, similar to this right here, except we don't want to use the jobs value. We want to use this functional family. So let's actually come up here and then use, let's see where we're at right here. We're going to do this, except we need to create our filter criteria here. And that's the great thing about setting this as empty, because we can continually change that. And that's why this is going to be a let. So we can continuously fill that and change it. So our filter criteria is going to be our comp division. Now it's not going to be our comp jobs value. It's going to be our, it's not going to be our comp jobs value. It's going to be this comp functional family value. And we can simply just do comp functional family dot value, and we can clean this up later. So now it's going to send this array over to this, and then let's think this through. So now it's actually going to have the job value filter all jobs, and we're going to need to add on to this here. So let's create a map in comments for us. So this is going to be 0 division. That's what the 0 index is going to be. The first index is going to be the job title, and then we're going to need a second index that is the functional family. Now we don't have a functional family here yet because we're only passing 2 arrays. So we're going to need to do that. So let's instead, it's not going to be a job filter. We can call this functional family filter. And that functional family is going to be, let's see, where's our functional family piece at? I want to say it's like 83 or something. Functional family, yep. So our functional family is going to be 83. And this is going to be 2. But now we don't have anything at the 2 index. So we're going to have to create that. And we're going to have to create that for every single one. So this is actually going to, this second index is going to be all families. Which we should be able to get away with. We'll see. If not, we'll just toss it in another one here. Should be able to pick that up though. And then what we're going to need to do is the same exact thing here, except this is going to be all families. No, this is going to be all jobs, excuse me. And then we'll be able to now have 0, 1, 2, 0, 1, 2. So now what we should be able to do is come back over here. And you see how complex this is getting. Once we get this working, we're going to condense this to where we can make this just a little bit more scalable here. So if our job title equals all jobs, we are going to return this, but we also need that to include our functional family filter. And filter criteria at 2 is also equal to all families. Then it's going to just return everything, all the division. So now what we need to think about is this is if all else fails, it's just going to return the job. So let's actually now look at this filter criteria, this functional family filter. So if else if, like so, okay, what in the world is going on here? Else if this, 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 there we go, that, this, okay. So if this filter here, so what we're going to need to do here is grab our functional family, and if that's not equal to, if the division is equal to all divisions, 0, well, it shouldn't be equal to all divisions, it should just be equal to something. But if this filter criteria 1 is equal to all jobs, then what we need to do is return this. So how that's going to look, okay, let me correct this here. There we go. Now how that's going to look is if that doesn't work, or if that doesn't come back true, then what we want to do is another if-else statement. And this if-else statement is kind of curious what that's about there. If this if-else statement comes back with our job titles being all job, then we want to essentially run something else here. So let's grab this. And we don't need this. Voila. Then what we're going to need to do is return this whole set of data, just in a different way. And it's not going to be the return job filter. It's going to be this thing. Because our division should always be set as something. And then this job filter, really we're just checking to see if it's going to be this and this. And then job filter 1 is all jobs. Else. Okay. Run that. Okay, so let's save this, and best way to figure it out if it works is save it, run an F12 and see what happens. Okay, so let's refresh our screen. See what we got. Spinny thing. Doesn't look like we have any issue here. Let's go to our executive. Let's lock it. Okay, this looks fine. We have this. We have that. Now what we were going to do is pick a functional family, say management, and then it should fire that. And there it is. And then if we were to say unlicensed trades, it should do the same exact thing. That, okay, good. So we have 2 people in unlicensed trades. Pretty good correlation that we do not pay salary based on experience. Okay, so now let's check finance specialist. Should change. Okay, good. And then we'll just pick a state and then see it like that. And it should do nothing except for reset everything. Okay, good. Good. So that works. So now what we could essentially do is continue building this out the way that we're going. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to build the rest of this out for our job level list, our state level, and our employee number, because I want you to see the whole code. And then I'll keep the page up there so you can copy it down if you want to pause the video and copy it down with this if statement. But then after you see it all in action, then we're going to take all of this and condense it down. So I hope this has been informative. Please look for the next video where I'll build this out ahead of time, and then we will consolidate all this, and we should have that filter roll piece done. So until next time, please take care.